Hey, hey, I am Shannon, and I am the founder of Saving It for Hubby. And I hope everyone is doing okay on this hot May day. So, thought I would hop on before I go get completely comfortable. I'm already halfway there. But I felt a tug to come on and talk about marriage. And I visit a lot of, women's groups and get messages. And the main question I always get is, I want to get married. When am I going to get married? Where is my Boaz? And when I'm in these groups, I'm sitting and I'm observing and listening, and I'm discerning, and I'm also listening for Holy Spirit. And some of the things he shows me is quite funny, but I will say um, that first we'll just say I've been married for 15 years, and marriage will make a woman out of you. You think you're a woman now? No, marriage will definitely make a woman out of you. And it's quite humbling. Um, you go through a lot. Like, you have these romanticized thoughts about how you think marriage will be. And then when you get in it, you're like, this is not what I signed up for. I signed up for the Hallmark movie. This is nothing like a Hallmark movie. And for those of you who want to know, marriage, it has its Hallmark moments, but it's not completely a Hallmark movie. And so, to answer the questions that I get about marriage is, first of all, you can prolong how long it takes you to get married. And what I mean by that is, if you think about the role of a wife, right? The role of the wife is a helper. She is to help. And wives are also called to submit. And that's my 3-year-old son. Uh, and some people, they hear the word submit and they're like, not happening. But really, if you think that you're not submitting to anyone, then marriage definitely isn't for you. And the way I look at submission is kind of like double protection. Submission means to come up under. And for me to come up under someone, that means I am trusting them, which is why it's so important to make sure you are choosing a godly man to marry. But we'll talk about that in a minute. But the main thing in your single life, and again, I'll just share a little bit about my life. I didn't know all this stuff when we got married. My husband and I went to a small Baptist church, and we just learned that you're not supposed to live together before you're married. He didn't get that from his family. I didn't get that from my family. And we lived together before we got married, and we'd cross paths with this couple who mentored us for a while, and they told us, well, you shouldn't be shacking up. And we tried to live apart, but it was just crazy. And he was like, the mentor, he was like, well, you get married. At the church we went to, there was no pre-married life. There was no premarital counseling. We met with the pastor. He found out that we were living together, and he's like, well, if you're having sex, you need to stop. Didn't bother to tell us why. And he said that you need to go ahead and get married. I'm like, okay. So we made preparations to get married. So we got married, and we knew nothing. Talking about the most jacked up setup. Oh my goodness, I feel like we were set up for failure because we knew nothing about marriage. And so I learned a lot of things the hard way, and so did he. And um, so submission, I was this Miss Independent woman. And, I had my own car. I had a good paying job. I had my own apartment. And what do you mean submit to who? I don't need to submit to anyone. And God was like, okay, you think so? And he straight up humbled me. Lost my car, apartment, eventually the job, like everything. And so, so he got his point across. And so I learned the hard way about submission. But what I would say to the women who are asking where their husband is and why they aren't married, I want to pose a couple of questions to you. One thing I notice is that, and something God points out, if you can't submit to God, you will not be able to submit to a husband. Not going to happen. If you can't submit to a loving God who loves you unconditionally in your most ugly moments, in your vulnerable moments, in everything, who loves you regardless, if you can't submit to that kind of love, then how in the world are you going to submit to a fallible man who is still, even though you're married, he's still quite capable of hurting your feelings or saying something or doing something crazy? Just because you get married, that's my son, Caleb. Say hi. Nobody wants to see your food, son. But just because you're married, it doesn't automatically make Caleb. No. Doesn't automatically make him Prince Charming. Oh, you hurt yourself? Okay. He hurt himself, y'all. Mommy, kiss it. Okay. So it doesn't make him Prince Charming. And so if you can't submit to God, you will not be able to submit to a husband, because the order is God, the man, the wife, children. So you have to marry a man who hears from God. And if he's heard from God, then what he says, because the husband has the final say, what he says is what goes. But if you're the type of woman that's like, no, I'm not doing that, you can't tell me what to do, I don't like this decision, then you're not ready. You're not ready. If every time God tells you to do something and you're bucking the system, so to speak, or if you only halfway obey, you're not ready for marriage. So that's one thing. There is no way that, another reason too I noticed is, and this is something that grieves God's heart so much because he's told me, is that women nowadays are so bitter and mean and harsh and hard. It's this whole boss babe, boss lady, boss chick mentality. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm all for women in business and entrepreneurship, but there is a way to do it. And it's like, now there's this way that, this boss babe is hard and, she's not feminine, she's sexy. There's all this oozing of sexuality and these 12-inch heels and the fake lashes and all of that. Now, if you like that stuff, that's up to you. But I'm saying that whole mentality does not work in a godly marriage. Not to say that you are to be like wimpy or run over. Not at all. It's called being meek, which is power under control. You want to be strong. Men, they need that strength that God put in us, but we have to know how to use it in a way that's healthy and helpful. And so some of you, if you were to get married now, you're so bitter and mean and hurt that you would make that man's life a living hell if you got married now. I'm just being truthful. Some of you can't even smile at another woman. Some of you, it's hard for you to speak. You can't compliment nobody else. If things don't go your way, you don't want nothing to do with it. If it's not all about you, you don't want it. It's like, what? You don't need to be married. And so some of you are still single because you're bitter, you're mean, You're not nice. You don't smile. You got to be in control. Everything has to go your way. Well, that's why you're not married, because no man wants a woman who has more testosterone than he does. Come on. My husband always tells me, he's like, a man wants a soft leg any day. He will give up hanging out with his boys to be with his wife. His soft leg, my husband's leg man, but he'll give up that to be with his wife. The Bible also tells us that the wife is a reward to her husband. Some of you, are you a reward to your husband? Like, are you? Are you? Would you consider yourself a true reward? Like some women, you're so brash. Hey, Courtney. You're so brash and so hard that, why would he want to be with you? Why would he do these things? Why would he want someone that he always has to do battle with? Like men, especially husbands, they carry so much on their shoulders. And why get married to someone you gotta come and fight with? Like, what is the point? So, that's another thing. A man does not want a woman who can't submit, who always has to fight. And I will say, too, to my married women, stop withholding. Okay, that's Holy Spirit. Stop withholding sex. So, if you're manipulative while you're single, that doesn't just change because you're married. It does not. It just doesn't. And, it's it just does not change. It doesn't change at all. So you're supposed to be as much as women talk about men. So they're watching. And I want to say, too, that God looks out for his sons just like he looks out for his daughters. You're no more special to him than his sons. And he watches out for his sons just like he watches out for us. So God is not going, he's not going to just give his sons to anyone. He's mindful of who he blesses his sons with. So if you don't know how to control this, that may be another reason why you're not married. I remember early on in our marriage, my husband was telling me something about, I don't even remember what the conversation was, but I remember, hi, LaKenya. I remember not liking what he was saying. I didn't like it. And so I'm like running off at the mouth and, just talking all kind of craziness, probably knowing me. And I went in my closet, and how you have the little hanging shoe tree thing with your shoes in it? Well, I went to the closet because I believe we were getting ready to go somewhere. I went to get some shoes, and I bent down to pick up something, and I kid you not, one of those heels fell and hit me in the head. And I was like, really, God? Like, you didn't have to make the shoe hit me in the head. It was crazy. But I learned that day to watch this. And what you come to learn as a wife, is you learn how to control you. And if there is something you don't agree with, your husband, you're partners. But he does have the final say. Now, this is not saying that you agree or submit to something sinful. No, you don't do that at all. But if there is something and your husband, he's heard you out and he has the final say, our job as wives is not to argue, not to fuss, not to fight, not to give all kind of grief. Your best battles are on your knees in your closet talking to God about it. God can take care of his son just like he can take care of you. It's been plenty of times I'm like, God, get your son. Get your son. Like, get him. So, those are just a few things, that I noticed when talking to single women is that, you want to be married, but there's too much time spent looking for a man and not enough time spent being the woman that he needs. And not to say that you're going to be perfect. You're not going to be perfect. That doesn't exist. But work on you. Because like I remember when we first got married, all kind of stuff started coming out. My insecurities. I was very insecure. So if you're insecure now, it comes out in marriage. My self-esteem was low. I was expecting my husband to be perfect and to make me feel good, to make me love myself, to make me believe that I was beautiful. I needed to have that first myself. I needed to believe that about me, whether he said it or not. And that, in marriage, all of that stuff comes out. So deal with your insecurities, whatever it is that you have. Deal with it on the outside. Deal with it before you get married, because it's not his job to do that for you. I see a lot of people, because my husband and I, we serve in our pre-marriage ministry at our church, and we see so many couples, with these unspoken expectations. I know we women fantasize about what we would wish men would do, but they cannot read our minds. I've been married 15 years and he still can't read my mind. So don't be expecting him to read your mind. It just doesn't. So deal with you now. Deal with you. I wish I had known so much before we got married, but we walked through these things together. It was not easy, but we got through it, and it's still a fight. I need God even more so now that I'm married than I did when I was single. So your relationship with Christ is the most important. You need Jesus so much when you're married, and especially when you have children, because in yourself you are not capable of loving another human being unconditionally and being able to pour and give to them the way they need. You can't do it in your own strength. So those are just some things, I noticed for all you, my single sisters who are, waiting for marriage and looking, sometimes you may be the culprit. You may be the one that's holding up the progress. So just think about it. And if you have any questions, thoughts, concerns, comments, shoot me a message. But anyway, I hope this was helpful. God bless you all. Bye-bye.